Just that, see if it works.
Yeah, and I think they were fine in the season. I think, but at this point, yeah, it's like we're not going to
Yeah,
have
we're live.
game stuff
We're
to go
live.
over.
Sorry, we're just talking show talk. We're just excited. So I don't know about Mike
Sorry,
and
guys.
Chad. No, you're good. We're just excited that the season's actually over. So I don't know. I don't know about Mike and Chad.
Switching into off-season mode.
Off-season mode, but kind of relieved that we're not talking about that Browns game this past week. Thank God the Browns provided enough content for us to cover, for us to act like it was just a 16-game season as opposed to a 17-game season, because I feel like that Baltimore game is just not worth even remembering. So,
I mean, we
tonight-
usually do a segment called The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. How hard would it have been to try to come up with a good after that
yeah,
nasty performance?
just in my opinion, you can't.
The
So
good is you found out you need a quarterback.
yeah,
That's about it.
I think we knew that, but it kind of solidified the fact that we do need a quarterback.
Right.
But what we're going to get into tonight is quite a few things. First is going to be Black Monday coming on Sunday. We're going to talk about the press conference on Monday with our two guys in charge, quote unquote. The bearded big board. We're going to talk about our top players for now in the draft. What we're looking for in draft position wise. We're going to do a new segment called Mock Around and Find Out, where we talk about some mock drafts that are out there. And we're going to talk about our roster realities. We're going to break down some positions that we may or may not need. Also, of course, we're going to talk about the Deshaun Watson setback while on vacation. And last but not least, the blame game. Who are we going to blame this season on today? I'm sure we'll probably have the same answer. Either way, we'll work it out.
No, it's kind of weird. We'll get into that eventually, but man, I sent you guys the
before we hit the blame game, we're gonna hit that poll, right? You're gonna go over the poll results, Mike?
Yeah. So it is excuse me, it is definitely not what I was expecting at all. People on X are completely different than people on Threads. So we're gonna needle the X here first.
Yeah, needle the X. So we're gonna, but before we get into our first segment, Black Monday came on Sunday. We're going to talk about our sponsor of this segment, Doug White from Allstate Insurance. If you're looking for a new insurance provider, please give Doug a call at 1-440-235-8500. If you do, please let him know the Bearded Browns podcast sent you. So this Sunday, we experienced a couple of changes in our coaching staff. First, Dorsey and Dickerson, they seemed probably interviewed them together and was like, listen, yeah, it's just not working. So your guys are fired. So we expected it, right, guys? We expected Dorsey for sure, Dickerson maybe. What do you guys thought on that firing, good or bad? Yeah,
I'm sincerely glad.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Come on, I don't think I literally came across like two guys on all of my interactions the entire time who weren't 100% sure that Dorsey should be fired. And the thing that they both had in common was they basically just both I'm trying to be polite about it. They both still have a lot of faith in Deshaun Watson and just like wanted to see like Dorsey should have been calling the plays and running the offense for Deshaun and because that didn't happen. But realistically, I think like 99.99% of fans looked at this season's offense and was like, okay, this ain't it. So that is not a shocker at all for me. I thought that was a terrible switch. And if I'm being honest, the only reason I think that guy got hired was a desperate attempt to try to both like justify and recuperate the Deshaun Watson trade. And it was like, well, what was happening with Deshaun Watson in his first 2 years was not the Deshaun Watson that we hoped to get. So like in a desperate attempt of like, maybe it's just the offense. If we get somebody that does something completely different, maybe that will unlock him. And he was worse than ever. He was so much worse this year. And I've said it a bunch of times. I do think that shoulder affected him. but mentally reading the field, making like decisions was so much worse this year, and the offense was so much more dysfunctional under him this year than what we saw before his injury in 2023, and even what we saw in that rusty 3-3 performance he had after that huge suspension. He looked better coming off of 2 years basically of sitting on his ace than he did coming into this offense this season. So like if that only reason you hired that guy was for that, it didn't happen.
Yeah. Mike?
I'm glad it's over. I don't ever want to witness that again.
Yeah.
You heard certain players talk about it a little bit as well. I mean, obviously they're not going to shout out the guy's name, but the changes that happened were crucial, and it's not something that there's a lot to talk about. We're going to get to it.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's
Yep.
gone.
My
Yeah,
my
the
take is,
the player interviews will come up later that Mike is talking about. We'll dive into those, but it is pretty telling when the players say something immediately after someone's gone, because even players don't like to do that because the NFL is a small world and they don't like to like throw each other's guys like under it publicly, but like you'll hear from some of the comments later that it seems pretty obvious they were not on board from the start.
yeah. So the reality of Dorsey and Dickerson's offenses is they're ranked 27th overall offensively. Points per game last with 15 points per game. You can't win in that. Your defense cannot win games or keep you in games if you're only scoring 15 points per game. Total yards per game, they're 28th in the league with 300. Passing yards per game, 22, which, by the way, you brought in Dorsey to fix that. And they're worse this year than they were last year. So put that in perspective. Rushing yards per game, 29th, which we expected with Dorsey. It fell off bad. Time of possession, they're 17th with 30 minutes, 12 seconds. The sack rate, by the way, they're 26th with 8%. 8% sack rate with that offensive line. Pressure rate was 23 with 35% of the time when teams didn't blitz, by the way. 35% of the time they got to the quarterback. So that tells you that this offensive line and offensive coordinator did not work. And we're going to hear why later, which I'm excited about. But that's just reality, folks.
And just another note on Dickerson. I don't think anybody was more patient with Dickerson than I was throughout the season, because I felt like he walked into a really tough spot. And I treated him like, okay, first of all, he's replacing somebody that most of the NFL and especially Browns fans look at as a legend in offensive line coaching. And to make things a little bit harder for him, he walked into a spot where, as he's trying to implement his coaching in the offseason, none of our 3 starting tackles were involved because they were still all doing rehab until like Jones came back like late in June, and the other 2 didn't come back to even practice until pretty much September. So I gave him a lot of leeway because I was like, well, how does he implement his scheme if that's happening? And then all those early line injuries happened too. And then I thought, okay, terrible situation for him. The only thing we can do to really evaluate him is see if in the second half of the season, does the line come together and look a lot better than it does in the first? Well, it turns out that did happen, but all these reports came out after that interview with Mike Vrabel, that and that special write-up that was done on him, that at the end of the season, the last like month or so of the season, he took over coaching the offensive line. So it was like, okay, so now you can't even attribute. Now the fact that they improved, you can't even attribute to Dickerson, which makes it really easy to see why he's not with them anymore. And you know, it's a bummer for him, but
the other one I want to talk about is the one that is kind of surprising, but maybe he's going to be a late cut. Bubba Ventrone. Do you guys think they're gonna wait until they fill that OC position, or do you think he's just staying?
I think he's going to stay, man. To be honest, I think he's going to stay. You can't really put. I don't want to say can't put full blame on him. I mean, the Dustin Hopkins misses, man, are terrible. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, you could say this with Dorsey as well. Is Ventrone out there kicking the field goals? No. Is Dorsey out there throwing the ball? No. But it's these guys' job to make sure that they're doing their job correctly. I don't think that Ventrone is honestly out there. I'm trying to think of how to say this. I don't think he is out there. How do you say this, man, without sounding like a complete dick? Don't fire him. Give him one more year, see what happens. That's all I'm gonna say.
I don't know. So for me, I think I appreciate Bubba Ventrone. He was a Brown. He was a kind of a star special teamer here. But when I look at him, like obviously he's not the guy playing, and there is something that comes with like you can't succeed if the players on the field can't perform. And that's pretty obvious in any situation. I always bring that up with the Browns offense, with the injuries and with the quarterback situation when I'm saying reasons why I don't think everybody should have gotten fired. But when it comes to Ventrone, I guess what I would say is, for me, every coach has their important jobs. The most important job of special teams is that you make your field goals and you make your extra point. Like it's scoring points. Like sure, the return game is important. The coverage game is important. But for me, the most important thing is putting points on the board. And I guess for me this year, like Bubba Ventrone came in to do that job. And our kicker, Hopkins, not only was way worse than he was last year, I expected him to regress a little bit because he was so incredible last year, but he's so far worse than his every other season in his career that, like, for me, I was shocked that wasn't enough for them to fire him. And then to boot, I feel like he played this year with like 4 different people returning kicks, and I didn't find any of them to be especially like notable, especially. And what frustrates me is there's guys like James Prochet on this team who they literally didn't even bring in as a receiver. He was brought here, and all we were told is it's because he's a kick and punt returner. And so I don't know. I guess when I look at it, like I didn't see any special kick returns. I didn't see any special punt returns. We missed far too many kicks. I'm pretty much shocked that because of that, he's still here. And I'm kind of with Angel that like the Browns have fired people a week later in the past when somebody else has come along that they've wanted. But also I see Mike's point that they fired 2 guys. The most likely time to have fired him would have been now. So I'm a little baffled that he wasn't fired. I guess out of all the coaches you kept and everybody could use improvement, that's the one guy where I don't see any redeeming quality. Like I just don't see what he did where you're like, we're keeping him because of this upside. I don't know.
James asked how long he's been a special teams coordinator, and I'm pretty sure it's 2018 with the Colts.
He was with Indy before he came here.
Yeah, it's not if it was like, it was his first year and he was dealing with like, Hopkins got hurt the first week and there's all this bad stuff, but like he didn't really deal with any actual hardships like our special teams were available.
He did. He failed in finding a freaking punt returner, like just somebody that could possibly.
And
pull
I
off
feel
the punt
like
return would be great.
One person that did pretty well one game was Darden. And they just like, all right, now he's back to being cut the next week, which is weird. So I don't know if he makes those decisions or not, but even Ford showed signs of life there. So I think if you do have someone who can return punts, maybe he can improve. Do you think the rule change messed his mind up?
I think it was pretty clear, and it wasn't a giant drop, but a couple % of field goals went down this year across the board. I think it is clear that guys focused a little differently on the way they were kicking field goals and that, I mean, the way they were kicking kickoffs, and that probably affected their field goal kicking a little bit because historically that's pretty much all they've practiced for years because they just kick it out of the end zone every kickoff. But that just comes to the idea, did Bubba Ventrone just go way over the edge with trying to get tricky with these kickoffs and working on that kind of kicking, and it messed up the way Hopkins was kicking? We got interview after interview the whole last month of the season where he's like, we found some things that were wrong, we're fixing them. And it's like, well, this is stuff you should have identified the first month. We all knew he wasn't kicking well that first month, did you just say like, he'll get himself out of it? Because your job as a coach isn't to let him kick his way out of it. It's to find the problem and work with him to fix it. And I didn't see that. But maybe the Browns, see it differently.
Speaking of Brown seeing it differently, Paul DePodesta,
The mystery man.
Mystery man. His contract is up, or is coming up, depending once the league season ends. Do we keep him to do what he's currently doing, even though we really are not 100% sure on what he's doing? If he's doing good or bad?
Analytics guy. No, I just don't think it's. Only God knows what he's doing, apparently. But no,
I agree.
That guy's getting paid.
This was one of my biggest conversations through the week on X, by the way.
Yeah.
Just this back and forth on DePodesta.
And we're arguing for a guy that we really don't know what he does. Yeah. It's a weird thing.
I have my guesses, but it is odd because they don't really talk about it. He's working as like the chief strategy officer and as basically the president of football operations, which is essentially standing in for what Jimmy Haslam does. I see him as like a sounding board. I think part of the reason he was brought in is so Jimmy has somebody to bounce an idea off before he does something that which he's done in the past, that will cause too much trouble. And I think like everybody looks as an analytics guy because he kind of mastered sabermetrics and changed like the way baseball was done. But I always push back a little bit on like the analytics thing, because I don't think you hire somebody into like a CEO type role just to do math. Like they must have had an interview process. They didn't have him come in and they're like, hey, do you understand PFF and statistics? Perfect. You're the CEO you're the chief strategy officer of this company. Like there's something more to it than like that. And he came out with those guardrails. He has that whole huge list that got released right afterwards, that insider like release of like what the organizational guard rules are. So he's coming up with like the structure for how the organization can be successfully run because it was so discombobulated when it started. My question is, I don't feel like they're sticking to those guardrails at all. I just feel like he created them and we're picking and coaching differently from that. But B, let's say he put that stuff into place. His role, has he served his purpose? Is Haslam just like, I needed somebody here to like help me figure out who we hire to choose the food in the cafeteria and who do we give the responsibility to how big of a scouting department should we have? Like that's the kind of stuff I think he was hired for. So my question is, did he accomplish that already? And that's why he's not resigned, because he's the one guy that was, all of the guys were set to end their contract 2024. And then the other two were extended and he wasn't. That's why it's a little bit weird. My only conspiracy theory, which we talked about in the other podcast, is I have to wonder if he's a big part of the whole conversation about how an organization needs an elite quarterback in order to succeed. And maybe he was the big push for them to try to find a different route for quarterback. And maybe that's the reason he's not coming back, is because he's the fall guy for that.
We have a question on Facebook, Mike. Adam asks, are you going to be drunken rambling tonight?
No, me and Sam were just excited that the season ended, and I was like, it's like 11 o'clock, 11:30. I even texted you guys, like, hey, you guys want to go live?
And me and my wife was spending time together. I was like, maybe. And then you told me like the next morning, dude, I just went a 3-hour live. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, we had I would have been from sleeping. The Steel City Renegades. He's a Steelers guy.
Gotta let it out, man. Let it out.
That was a bad night. Thank you, Adam, for bringing that up.
Next topic is, what do we need to improve or prove? First, we're going to go with Andrew Berry. What do they need?
We're going to go through the stats of these polls that I did real quick while we're on this subject.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You did a poll.
Yeah, I did a poll, and it says, let's play the blame game. To the Browns fans, correct? Let's do that. Who do you blame this 3-14 season on? And your choices were Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, the Haslams, or Paul DePodesta. 7% of you said Kevin Stefanski. This is actually on Threads right now. 13% said Andrew Berry. 70% out of 58 votes said the Haslams. and 11% said Paul DePodesta. I love how we're blaming the guy that we don't even know what he does, but that's awesome.
I think that's why some people blame him. Like I said, like we don't know what he does. He's the only guy that's not transparent. He's not coming back, at least as far as we know yet. Some people are probably like, that must be his fault.
Right, just blame it on him.
Yeah.
But
People are believing my conspiracy theory.
now on X, this one is completely different. It is weird. This one's out of 223 votes. 5% of you said Kevin Stefanski. 34% said Andrew Berry. 42% said the Haslam's. And 19% said Paul DePodesta. So the issue apparently seems to be the Haslam's is the winning vote
the ownership
across the board.
I can also say that there's about 19 comments on that, and all 19 were like, we need an all of the above selection. So
But
I think
did
most people
obviously.
think like everybody has a little bit to do with it, but I like the way that it broke it down as like you only get to blame one. Who is it?
Pick your
I
poison.
mean, it does start at the top, guys. Like
Yeah.
Haslam has had struggles, and he is the person that inevitably hires everybody below him. So I don't want to give him direct blame for each little thing that happens, but the whole global project of what we have in front of us with the Browns, I mean, that it was his project, and that didn't work.
And
Yep.
it's funny because the way I placed it is where I thought everybody was going to blame Kevin Stefanski first. So I put him first. I thought about it if I posted it.
Yeah.
Then Andrew Berry, then the Haslam's, and then the guy that nobody knows anything about. So, I mean, obviously the issue
And he got more votes than Kevin.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny
So-
is given the loudest, so we've talked about this before. Sometimes the loudest voices are not the majority of voices. There's a very vocal minority in Twitter, which I've seen ever since I was doing the old show or when I was just on Twitter as like a guy decades ago. The loudest people who post the most, who have comment on every single thread, makes it seem like, oh my God, everybody hates Kevin Stefanski. Everybody wants Kevin Stefanski fired. All these complaints about Kevin Stefanski. Then you do a poll like this, and only 5% pick Kevin
Exactly.
Stefanski. And you realize, oh, it's just these same 6 guys who are commenting on every single thing, like riling
Yep.
up this take. And it's very different to see a poll like that and think like, oh, the majority do not think Kevin is the biggest problem on this organization. It's just the people that dislike him probably dislike him more than anybody who dislikes anyone.
Well, you said it. They voiced their opinion out loud, not on social media. The Kevin Stefanski haters. Was that you
Yeah.
that posted that?
Yeah, they comment on everything and they rile up the conversation, and it's like you just keep seeing like, oh, Kevin needs to be fired. But then when you look back, you start noticing the more you're on it, like, oh, these are the same names. It's just these same like 6 accounts who are commenting on every single Browns post saying
That's all
like
6%
fire Kevin.
that blamed
And
Kevin.
and you realize like, oh, it's just those 5 guys that the 10 guys that answered that poll out of 260 are those 10 guys that hate Kevin, and that's why it seems so overwhelming.
Sorry, Andrew. I did not mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to get that
No, you're good.
pull out there right
No.
at this time.
No, that's good because you're going to go into. I mean, though AB and Kevin did not win those votes, which I think the fans voted correctly, anyways. What do they need to improve or prove? AB first.
I think Andrew Berry has this year to show up. Honestly, you didn't draft a first-round pick at all the last 3 years, and now it is up to him to completely decide his own fate.
Yeah, so that was the first one I wrote down. So I wrote down about 3-4 things for each guy. That was the number one for Andrew Berry. He needs to succeed with like the top picks. He needs to show up in this draft. He's got the second pick. He has to come out of this draft with talent that improves this team. And there's different ways to do it. We'll get into that later. That's for another podcast. But the one thing he has to do is he has to show with a first and second round pick, which he hasn't had or utilized much, he can pick players that can help this team, whether it's trading down and getting more picks and doing that, which is tough. You got to get elite talent, or whether it's just picking somebody right up top who's a stud, who through 2025, you're like, nailed it. I'm ready for him to pick again in 2026. Another one I put down is that I think he has, and this could go in hand. We'll see how the draft goes. But the next thing is I think he needs to be able to identify a quarterback. Flacco off the couch was a long shot, and it worked for a short time, and we saw how it failed at the end, and we saw what he looked like this year in Indianapolis, and it's like that was never a long-term option. That was just a desperate attempt. We thought he was. He's a interception. He's a 1-to-1 touchdown interception guy who I was hopeful for, and I really have fun watching. I'd have fun watching him again next year, but he's not the guy. Jacoby Brissett was milk toast. They moved on from Baker Mayfield. Whether it was his idea or not, he's going to get at least a portion of the blame for Watson. Like, he needs to be able to get a quarterback for this team because I don't believe anybody on the offense succeeds without one. I don't believe the defense can continue to succeed without one. And I don't believe that Kevin will last in this job without one. So job number 2 is he's got to be able to find a quarterback some way. And then the next 2 are a little bit more minor. One, he's got to execute those guardrails. I know DePodesta is not big on anybody's list right now, but when I look at like the guardrails he laid out for the team, everybody said him 100 times: smart, tough, accountable. I honestly can't tell you if the guys that Andrew Berry has brought in follow that mold. And that's the one part of the guardrails that I thought was pretty impressive. Like, I'd love to just bring in tough, accountable guys who work hard and who are smart. And then you got guys like Kadarius Toney coming in on flyers. He's drafted like, guys that don't seem to fit the mold of the culture you're trying to change. And that goes with the last one of he needs to start being very careful about picking these low character guys because he has brought in, I have no problem bringing somebody in with a troubled past. He brought in Perion Winfrey. Mike Hall, I don't think had any history, but turns out probably some flags there you should have found. Just all over the board every year.
That's all.
Every year, all over the board, there's like one guy he brings in that makes you question things, and I'm okay doing that, like bringing in a low cost guy or a draft steal because of a problem like that. But so far, none of them have pretty much worked out for one reason or another. So if he's going to do that, A, he's got to do it more sparingly, and B, he's got to pick guys that are actually so talented that it works. And those are all things that I think AB needs to improve before next year.
I'll add one more to that, and I think it probably gets ignored often, even though it's the most important one, is work through the salary cap. Work it out. You're going to, and I think this is probably his strong suit, which maybe it doesn't get talked about because people feel confident in him laundering this money that has to work out to pay players and get new players in and somehow work out to where you're going to pay Miles a max contract and while dealing with the quarterback that's not here. So I think he needs to continue to work that out. And I'm going to be honest with you. I said this Saturday. I think the punishment for AB is not to get rid of him right away. Is that you let him work this out until the end is done. And so you have money in your account to where you say, okay, now we have money, you're gone. We're going to bring a GM that will properly pick people and pay people accordingly. Now, again, you can't place the money issue on him because I think the Haslam's have a lot to do with that also. Number 2.
And it's mostly Watson, but I like that you added that because he's done an elite job, I think, at the cap so far. But now, for the first time, he's dealing with this cap with a team that just had a terrible year, and it needs to be. He needs to revitalize the team while still maintaining this crazy cap nonsense that he's been able to juggle.
People are going to be shocked that he's going to pay Myles Garrett max money this offseason. I don't know how he's going to do it, but I'm calling it right now. On to Kevin. What does he need to improve or prove this offseason?
I'm going to hit a comment before Gregory says, I feel like Kevin was handcuffed by the organization, and now this year he's finally going to be able to be given the opportunity to have a little bit of freedom, more run to make it what he wants. Thoughts on that? And that goes right into this. Kevin is Kevin. Forget about the 2-time Coach of the Year crap. Again, I'll say it again. It's a participation trophy. I honestly don't care. I don't think he really cares. At the end of the day, he wants a winning team, and he wants to be able to do what he's capable of doing. But he's so strapped down by the organization itself. We don't really know this, but it seems that way.
Yeah.
That's.
And I would say the reason I put these two things in there is because this came from like comments on Twitter and comments in our show. I think people look at us as because we sort of defend Andrew Berry and Kevin, and mostly because we just came along 2 months ago and we're like, these guys aren't getting fired. They're not the major problem. They're not getting fired. So I've just come across a lot of people that are like, you guys just defend them no matter what. And I was like, the problem is we defend them because people over exaggerate their problems. Much like Baker, I compare Kevin to Baker Mayfield all the time. Baker Mayfield was a flawed quarterback. The reason I used to defend him a lot is because people were so negative on him, unfairly so, about his play that they're like, this guy sucks. And it's like, I'll say the same thing for Kevin. He obviously doesn't suck, but I wanted to throw in a segment that shows like we do understand that both Andrew Berry and Kevin need to improve, and all of us realize things that they need to get better at. The question is, can they go into next season and do that? So, Mike, do you have any things about Kevin Stefanski's performance this year specifically, or through the 5 years that like?
Oh, now the whole show's on me. He asked me one question, and that's what happens. Angel is back.
Chad should be back. Is
He
Chad
asked me
back?
one question, and both you guys disappeared, man. I was like,
He's-
man, I think that's all Angel stats too. I don't even.
I see him on my screen. Do you see him on
Oh
yours?
yeah, he's back. Hold on.
Okay, good.
Chad. All right, we're back.
I see me also.
Yeah.
So anybody want to take this? Because I wrote a couple down, but I was curious if you guys came up with the same thing on like of 5 things that Kevin Stefanski needs to focus on improving for next year.
I still would like to see his scheme with somebody else possibly calling the plays or a collaborative effort. You understand what I mean? I want to see if we're obviously going to bring another offensive coordinator in. I just want to see a collaborative effort where heads aren't clashing, because that seemed like him and Dorsey did not work. Obviously, clearly, as day.
And that made a lot of people think like Dorsey was not his hire. Dorsey was like, we need somebody different. Here's who we want you to work with, which happens in jobs. Like you don't always pick like your partner in a job. Your boss often hires like a guy to work with you, but I don't think that's the way it should be. I think Kevin has shown enough that he should be hiring the next staff, and he has made it sound pretty clear like that is the direction that they are going to go. You basically just hit 2 that I wrote down, Mike. One was he needs to hire the right coaches, especially at offensive coordinator. And second, he needs to be able to kind of reestablish his scheme, or like a offensive scheme that this team can run with going forward that gets them back to being a successful offense. So you kind of just covered 2 of the main things I thought of. Angel, you have any that come to mind?
Be a man. I want Kevin to be a man. I want him to go, and I want him to be demanding. I don't want him to be passive anymore. I want him to be very aggressive and say, listen, I have proven that I have ran this offense successfully without the quarterback you picked. Every quarterback that I picked worked out. My scheme worked. We did it your way, and we ended up being dead last in offense. My way, I was continuously trending up offensively each year. So you give me my decisions. You give me what I want to do offensively. Listen, if you want to pick the players and have my input, that's great. I will work around the players you give me, but I want to pick who's my OC is, who my quarterback coach is, and I want to run my offense the way I want to run it. And gosh darn it, give me play calling back.
One other thing. I want to see sideline discipline. I want to see.
Yeah. So that was another one. So you guys have pretty much hit everything I wrote down. I didn't write sideline discipline, but penalties and discipline. Like this team has for 2 years in a row has been too high on penalties. They haven't seemed to know where they're supposed to be on the offense, and he needs to get control of this team. And then the only other thing you guys didn't hit was I think he needs to improve on. People know him as a player's coach. A lot of people love him for that reason, and he's not the only one. There's really great coaches that are that kind of coach that people love. Like everybody doesn't have to be this hard-ass coach that like the players hate. And everybody doesn't have to be Bill Belichick where the players hate coming to work every day but are successful. There's other guys like that throughout this league that are successful.
Kevin to channel in his inner Dan Campbell.
Right. But I think he needs to be able to adjust his demeanor and his presentation for different people for different needs. For example, if he's handling these character guys who have trouble, who have been into trouble before, or who whether it's a a Perion Winfrey guy who, he has off the field issues. Now he's gone. I want to see a head coach that can handle that guy and reel him in and find a way to motivate him. Jedrick Wills, who came into the league and had 2 really good first years and then just kind of spiraled and became worse and worse and worse over the next 2 years of his career before the injuries set in. Like, he was already on the decline. I need Kevin to figure out a way to work either with his coaches or those players to change the way he interacts with them to find a way to get the best out of them. So, and I think handling different egos, different character guys is something that a young coach does need to figure out. But 5 years in, now I need him to kind of develop in that where he's like, okay, I know these guys like Batonio, he handles his business. I'm going to let him do his thing. Wills doesn't. I need to step in and find a way for me and whatever coach is working with him to get him on track.
Yeah, good takes, all of them.
And if he can't do it, then find people to do that as your coaches. You know what I mean? So
Hire the right guys.
Hire the right guys.
You're not going to be a hard ass. Hire an offensive line coach, and they did. The guy that walked away to go coach with his son was that guy, and it kind of worked because he was kind of a hard ass coach. He was a tough coach, and he really, really pushed those guys. So some of the balance comes from maybe Dickerson came in and he was even more laid back than Kevin. At least I've seen his interviews. That's what he looked like. That probably didn't work.
Yep. Next, we're going to talk about my top offensive coordinators. I kind of did a quick list this past week and posted it. I'm just going to give you my 4. Well, we can do 5 because we're at Reese there at number 1. I think having someone in-house who knows your system, who knows your culture already should be the guy you get. But I also like Clint Kubiak, offensive coordinator from the Saints. There's 2 reasons. One, Kubiak is the system that Kevin's familiar with, his system.
All you got to say is Kubiak.
He's also the son of Kubiak. What's his father's name? It just slipped my mind.
Gary
Kubiak. So I think that there's a
Kevin has
there.
worked with for a long time. And by the way, it's not just that there's a connection and it's at the same system. I love legacy guys, man. You know how bad I wanted Shanahan to coach for our team? And when they hired him as an OC, I was so excited because I don't believe a guy like that who has shown some success and whose dad has been so successful. Like, I believe just like with players whose brother, dad, whoever is successful, like it gives them a leg up. It's not automatic. Every kid of every guy, like I don't see Bill Belichick running out as like, I'm the greatest coach of all time, ready to take over. But like a kid of a guy who has been successful for like 30, 40, 50 years in the NFL, like that's a nice thing for me. So seeing Kubiak, like it just gives me a feeling like the guy will know what it takes to win.
Also like the fact that he's connected to Derek Carr. So if you need a veteran for 1 year, he already knows the system. So you can bring him along with, or maybe entice Derek Carr to come along and play for a year or 2 while you're bringing up your rookie quarterback. And my third on the list is Clay Kubiak. Yes, that is the small brother of Clint. Reason why he's enticing for me is because he is currently in the 49ers offense. He's the offensive pass game specialist. Why is that so important, Angel? Well, because our passing game sucked. Just be reality. And 2, he is working with what Chad just said, Shanahan, who is a brilliant mind in the NFL. So why not bring, and I think he can entice him because you can give him an OC title position as an upgrade and a promotion and more money. And he can bring maybe a new, fresh look as an offensive scheme, which is similar to Kevin's, in which Shanahan runs at San Francisco, which is obviously successful because he's running McCaffrey and Dabo and everybody else. Anyone,
and I kind of love these picks because I kind of love these picks because they do come from the same mentality of Stefanski, but because of the 2 places they're playing, they're not running this wide zone scheme the exact same way. So it's like they understand it, but they can also bring a fresh perspective and other connections to the table. And you're right, you just nailed it. I've said before, I think Shanahan is one of the smartest coaches that I've ever heard talk about the game. And I love the idea of having a guy who has absorbed some of that knowledge, but also who Shanahan himself thought, this guy's got something. That's a good sign for me.
Because you can look at Sam Darnold and you can say, wow, he looks good this year. And you can probably contribute to the fact that Clay Kubiak coached him along with Shanahan. So he learned something in that system and is applying it there, which is kind of the same system in Minnesota. Joe Hazel, University of Tennessee offensive coordinator. Why him? Tennessee's offense has been pretty good as of late. I know it's just basically it was a preseason game. Milton from the New England Patriots balled this past weekend. He was their quarterback there last year. I think he's probably lower on the totem pole, probably one of those guys that are going to be an up and coming guy in a couple of years, but somebody to keep your eye on. And of course, our beloved Josh McCown, who's a quarterback coach at Minnesota. Now, there's reasons for it. I think he was brilliant here as a quarterback mind. Obviously not a player, but I think he was a good, humble guy that was teaching, trying to help Johnny Manziel, trying to help other quarterbacks groom him into a good quarterback. And he's doing pretty good with Sam Darnold in Minnesota. So those are my two dark horses at the end. But if it was up to me, I do like Reese because he's in the building. But if you could give me one of the Kubiak kids, I would be happy with that.
I will say this. I think it's a newer name and it would be pretty fast moving up the chains. But with the work he's done this year with Darnold and from the stuff I've read, that he is working like very hand in hand. And Darnold did say like he learned a lot in San Francisco. He's made it clear like the last 2 years he has developed and learned and figured things out. So it's hard to decide like which one of those guys had the bigger influence.
Yeah.
But the Kubiak name, both of the Kubiaks kind of like I'd feel a little more confident in, but McCown is just a name that I think will be a quick. When he was here as a quarterback, like I heard beat reporter after beat reporter saying, like this guy's a coach. This guy's for sure retiring. He'll be a coach. He's incredible in the quarterback room, and I just can't imagine with the way Sam Darnold has risen this year, some team is not going to call him and upgrade him in some form. So we'll see, but that's a lot of good names. The Tennessee one threw me off. I don't know anything about him, but I like when people throw in those names because it gives everybody a chance to let's look this guy up, see who he is, see if Angel's right, and he does appear somewhere.
Because
but
he
awesome
seems to developing good quarterbacks, and I think that's what a lot of people are kind of like peeking at him right now. Now he's young, so he's newer, so I don't. That's just a dark horse. Like I said, I don't think if they do press that button, that would be a huge jump for him. But
be a surprise. But maybe they have
on.
some role for him. Maybe he appears in somewhere and starts working up the chain. And then just for everybody that does know, the Tommy Reese is a pretty fast riser. Basically, what you just described. He was working the offense for Notre Dame. He moved on to work the offense for Alabama. He came here to coach the tight ends. And a lot of people believe he was brought in here to coach the tight ends to get him in the building because of how many people had heard good things from him from Nick Saban or respect the way he thinks of the game. And just for everybody that's like a little skeptical of hiring from within, because I'm sure you look at this year's offense and even the tight ends and go, well, what did he really do for us? Mike Vrabel has made it pretty clear through channels. If he gets a coaching job as a head coach, one of his first interviews for his offensive coordinator is going to be Tommy Reese. So somebody that pretty much all Browns fans agree is like a pretty exciting person, has a lot of respect for this kid, which does make you think, okay, we should probably give him a look.
I'll also say this. If you don't think he's done much with the tight ends, I think Aikens has had a good last couple of games. If you look at the stats and what he did, he was basically the receiver to go to last game. So I think there's some room to talk about his development of the tight end room in there.
I even think the Blake Whiteheart kid is starting to show up a little bit here and there. He's got some.
And that's catches. A no-name undrafted free agent. That's somebody that I didn't even hear about till the first time he was on the field.
Yeah. So when you look at player development, you can see growth in those two players. You would think, well, if you can put him as an offensive coordinator, can he improve a rookie quarterback? I have high hopes that he can. On to what everyone in the chat seems to want to talk about, the pressers. We're gonna hit up Andrew Bear. We do have a video. Mike, you want to play that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. sit here in front of you with a season where we just won 3 games, and I really share in our fans' disappointment, frustration. Quite honestly, I'm embarrassed with the results that we've had as a team this year. Just plainly put, we didn't meet expectations. Our decisions coming into the year didn't meet expectations, and ultimately that responsibility lies at my feet. Thinking back a little bit to a year ago where we were coming off an 11-win season going into the playoffs, our goal has always been to perform at that level or a higher level on a consistent basis. And in order for us to do that, especially as we look at this season, we really have to look at everything. It's an objective and hard analysis at each position group in the roster. It's looking at what we're doing to put our players in the best position to be successful. It's looking about how we practice, how we train to avoid the major losses that we've had in player availability over the past couple of years. We really do have to look at everything.
Hey, Mike, is that the full video?
No, that's not the full video.
Okay.
That was like a minute. And that's him basically apologizing to the fans without apologizing to the fans and taking the blame for this year, which essentially it does fall on a GM's hands or feet, what he said. But unfortunately, not every draft works out. And unfortunately, we made a dumb decision and brought Deshaun Watson here and lost 3 first rounders out of it. And this, like I said earlier, this is his time to shine now. This is it. It's now or never.
Yeah, I would like to hit a couple of things that he said that we didn't show. First was obviously, I think we'll save the Watson one for last because it can tie into Kevin. But Chubb, you guys understood what he said about Chubb?
Where
I mean, his word.
Kind of like seemed like
he was kind of he was non-committal
nice.
about Chubb being
Yes.
back, basically.
Yeah, he said that I see him as a Ring of Honor player. Now,
Very
when you-
complimentary without saying he
Yes.
sees him as like a current answer at running back.
yeah. So one thing we're getting, I don't know if you guys are, but what I'm getting out of Barry says a lot without saying a lot. So if you go back to what he said about Miles, which is he's a Hall of Fame, he's going to stay here and he's going to go to Canton player, and we're going to keep him. And he did not go that far with Chubb. So, and obviously last year is different than this year. Last year he had a contract. This year he doesn't. So I think in some ways he's preparing the fans to be a little disappointed.
Yeah.
Because if Chubb wants more money, I don't think they're going to pay him.
I think Chubb is humble enough and grateful for what we've done for him already. Unfortunately, the injuries happen. And I hate saying that, but it's in Cleveland fashion. We fall in love with a player and we expect to, no matter what, no matter the circumstances, keep that guy. And he's going to probably have to take like a vet minimum with incentive.
We'll find out. I was told, that would be somewhere around like 1.25 million plus like incentives and bonuses. But I don't think we need to harp on this too long, but I agree with you. Like he was non-committal with Chubb. He was very committal with Miles. Like, we'll have Miles back. I still expect Chubb back, but as we go through this offseason and our offseason shows about team needs and things, like we'll know more. We might find out something before this league year is even over. If not, we'll find something out pretty early in March, but we don't have to go too deep into it. But it was a little bit of a gut check, reality check that the way he approached that.
Because the reality is the reality. If you are going back to a wide zone scheme offense, you need a running back who can hit the hole as fast as Chubb did. And if he's not who he was 2-3 years ago, I don't think you can bring him back at the money that he may want. Now, if you bring him back at vet minimum, of course, that works out great. Then he spoke about Deshaun Watson. And what he said about that Deshaun Watson is very often confusing because he'll say a couple of things. First, he opened up the press conference with telling us that Deshaun Watson was injured, right? Re-injured himself. Guys, they normally don't do that, right?
Especially
if you look
in the
at
off season now.
if you look at JOK's injury, they've been hush about it the whole time. This time he comes up. He wasn't asked a question. It wasn't dragged out of him. He said, "Before I start this off, I just want to let you know Deshaun Watson has had a setback on his injury. I don't know the details. It just happened a couple hours ago, and that's all I have."
In layman's terms, he said Deshaun Watson's a piece of shit. He will not be returning to the field this year.
It was very much so. One thing was brought up to me that I didn't really catch, and it was that he had mentioned that Deshaun Watson had brought forward the problem to the team doctor. Not
Yep.
so much that they it was very much like Deshaun Watson approached the team doctor during the physical to let him know there are some problems. And why that's relevant is because, people have said, I've been arguing with people online all the time of like, oh, they should just fake this injury and cut him and stuff like that. And I'm like, he's part of a union. There's a lot of things you can't just do because you end up getting in trouble for being fake. Let's put it this way. They have a $44 million insurance policy out of him. I don't know if y'all know this, but if you take out $1 million policy on your house and then you set it on fire, you go to jail because that's
illegal.
It's called insurance frauds, and it's not a $44 million house. So for everybody that's just like, yeah, they just faked the injury, there has to be something to it. And when Deshaun presents it, all of a sudden it takes the burden off the Browns. They didn't have to say how injured are you, Deshaun? Deshaun said something's wrong. And the team doctor looked at it and apparently confirmed yeah, this isn't right. Something's wrong. I know none of the details. And from my perspective, obviously being a DPT, I wish I could find out a little bit more, and I'm going to dig into it, and any little thing I can poke around and find out, I'll let you guys know. But yeah, this is something real. This is beyond conspiracy theory stuff. This is stuff that's going on.
James just said he probably felt making another TikTok with his girlfriend.
Guys, that was 2 years old. That was a 2-year-old
I know,
TikTok.
but that's funny how isn't it?
I know,
funny
it did trick
how
us.
just
But
came out.
it tricked me. I tell you, I thought. But he did take a picture of him on a yacht during that horrible loss this Saturday, just in case
Think
you
he
guys
has
want
him
to
for
know.
paying for that.
You want to know that he took a picture with his gold on and him and his girlfriend on a yacht.
I mean, the guy is one broken foot out the door.
Yeah.
It's it just makes you feel like he's on a different plane, and if there is a problem, he's already sat out one season because the situation he was in was something that was difficult for him. It's not shocking now to think, well, he might sit out 2025, stay on the PUP list, rehab the whole year, and start planning his bright comeback in 2026, whether it's here or somewhere else. That's not a shocking thing anymore. That's something I wouldn't have believed 6 months ago, and I believe it now.
You know what I can't wait to see? $230 million the way he's spending money isn't going to last long. There's not going to be another team that picks this guy up. So I hope you're investing, Deshaun. Invest it somewhere maybe to save your ass at the end of the day, because your time's running out, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think he's. Again, I'll say it again. I don't think he'd be wearing a Browns uniform again, but that's just my humble opinion.
We could hope.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see him wanting to compete with another vet or even a rookie that
Which is probably a good thing for us, given where he's been.
Yeah,
because he can only hurt himself at this point.
On to Kevin's press conference. Let's see what he said.
Okay, obviously, tough day. The finality of the season coming to an end is always hard. There's frustration from myself. I'm sure our fans, I share in that frustration. Extremely disappointed in where this season went and that we're not playing football anymore. That's tough. So tough day all around, but we're going to get to fixing this, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to get back to work. So we're going to meet with the players today, meet with the coaches, and obviously we'll have time to look at all this, but extremely frustrated, extremely disappointed, extremely appreciative of our players. Gave me and gave us everything they had. Fought like crazy. The results were not what we wanted. That's obvious, but I'm certainly grateful to them for how hard they played, kept swinging. I know you guys saw the news on Ken Dorsey and Andy Dickerson I think the world of those two guys as people, as coaches, but I'm going to go in a different direction, and I'm appreciative of their hard work as well.
So he told them that he's appreciative of their hard work, but he's going in a different direction. Like Stefanski made that choice. He made that choice at the end of the day and said, Dorsey's got to go. Dickerson's got to go.
Yeah, and I've brought this up before. Like the way he phrased it is very telling of like, I'm gonna go a different direction. I'm ready to bring in somebody. It does sound like he's like taking charge of this, and I think that's what most people thought was part of the problem with the Dorsey pickup in the first place.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping that he consistently does that even off season. He's very vocal on what he wants, what this team needs. I was thinking about this today. I think a lot of people realize how good they had it when he was here running things. When he was calling plays, when his offense was not what sure, he has some hiccups here and there with some play calling and some issues, but it wasn't this bad. And I think him coming back, him getting his offensive line back to where it needs to be, getting his offense back to where it should have been this year without the people messing with it will make him even happier. And I'm excited to see what that entails, how that's going to improve, who they're going to bring on to help improve that offense.
Damn it. Gregory's right. He said he's got lefties that cheesesteak place. So he did invest some money. Everybody in Cleveland, do not go to lefty cheesesteaks. I'm kidding.
Closing it down. On to the next video. Joe Patonio explains the issues of the offensive line this year, and it's very telling.
Joe, would you think it would make sense to go back to the kind of Kevin run-heavy play-action scheme that you guys had so much success with the first 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what Coach Stefanski's comfortable with. The marriage of the run and pass, you take your shots with some play-action heavy things. I think it's what we've had the most success under, and I think it's what Coach Stefanski is most comfortable with. The line was kind of built that way as well. I thought, me and Wyatt as pullers running some outside zone, like I think that was what I did well in my career, and I probably pulled like less than 10 times this year, overall. And there's games in my career where I pulled 8 or 10 times in a game. And so it was different for sure, but I think that's where the strength of the offense is. And hopefully we can, build it up and get the right people in the right position.
Get the right people in the right position. Stop pulling. It's so telling.
That may be one of him and Conklin may have been the most telling interviews to me because of the way they both basically, without like throwing somebody on the bus, just said like, hey, it's time for us to actually do the things that we're successful at and know the scheme and have an identity.
Yeah.
It's just not that much. You can't get much more clear with that without being a dick.
Conklin's comments were, we lack identity. We tried to do a lot of different things and we did not get good at one of them. He also added the comments, creating around an individual makes things tough for everyone else. That's throwing two people under the bus.
So telling, yeah. Just like, he didn't say any names. It was like creating everything around an individual. Do you think the players on this team didn't know throughout all of training camp that guy couldn't throw the ball this year coming off that shoulder, and he wasn't reading the defense as well? Yet every single day they show up to camp and they're like, this is what we're going to do so that this guy is successful. Everyone can imagine being in that work situation is like, we do everything to help this person and they suck. Like, what the heck are we doing here? So I get it. Like it's a wonder. It's a wonder for me that the guys at the end of this season, the ones that still remained out there through like November, December, looked like they were grinding so hard, because honestly, I've seen this team before when they've had 3, 4, 5 wins, and by December, everyone's done. Nobody's trying. They've quit. And it looks a lot like what we looked like in October when everyone was basically done until Deshaun got hurt and they got a little revitalized.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, like if they knew this going at the Greenbrier was going on, and they didn't believe in the system. It makes sense why the first 4 weeks that offensive line just didn't block. Right? We came out here multiple times like, why does this defense seem to come through? Like, what is going on? They didn't have their hearts in it. They didn't want to run the system. So it's kind of like you going to a job you don't want to go to. You're not going to put 100% effort into it.
I know that feeling.
Like you're
Oh,
not going to
sorry.
put 100% effort into it, nor
A
are you
lot of
going to
people
care.
do. That's Cleveland fans all the time. I'm like, y'all know what it's like to go to work and be like,
Yeah.
what am I doing? Like,
Yeah, what
this
am I
is
doing
not
here?
successful.
Yeah, so I mean that's what I believe the offensive line had to deal with, and then it brings back to Conklin saying when you're trying to do multiple different things, that's meaning, oh, now we kind of have to switch things up because there's a different quarterback in here. Oh, now we have to switch things up because DTR is in here. Oh, now Zappy's in here, so now we have to switch things up again. It brings to it's telling that maybe this offensive line isn't as bad as we were saying it was. Maybe it's the scheme.
I was going to get to that. Because remember how all year I kept on bitching about the offensive line being the issue, and Chad's like, no. I mean, you agreed to some
You
extent.
both were right.
But I mean, yeah, I was right, but to an extent. I wasn't completely right.
Most
It
of
was
my
because of
take,
the
most
scheme.
of my take was like, we know these guys and we've seen them be good in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023.
Yep.
The big change was we mixed
Scheme.
in injuries, but there was also something else. It was like not just that there was injured guys, because even when they got back, they just weren't good. And I just thought the scheme was bad. Now, to Mike's point, though, like I don't trust the line next year. Batonio's getting older, and our tackles, we have 2 guys left on the roster. They're both injured a lot. Like they do need to retool the line, but people were acting like all 5 of these guys are trash, and like I don't think the inside 3 are trash, and I think we have 2 guys that can both handle playing tackle. It's just a matter of I don't trust going in with 2, knowing that both of them get hurt all the time. So we do need another tackle. Mike's right, but I was right in that like there was something else going on that made them all look globally so much worse than I know that they are.
Yeah, and if I see Jed Wills on the field again, I'm gonna be so pissed. Like Barry, you will piss me off if you do that. Like that will be the
That would have to be desperation at this point.
Yeah.
yeah. But you could pick one up in the draft, and
It was horrible.
you could pick up somebody better than him. I imagine in the draft.
I
as
think
a
you
rookie.
can. I think in free agency, I think a moderate free agent is probably better than him by the end of his like, and not even like the injuries aside, whatever. He was injured a lot this year. He was injured at the end of last year. Before he was injured last year, he was not a top 25 tackle. You could find somebody to play the right tackle and be 15th to 20th for a fair price and like just be okay. Fetty is not him, but there's somebody out there, whether you draft him in the first or second round, whether you get a developmental guy and you hope he doesn't need to come in for injuries right away, or whether you just pick up a mediocre free agent or a guy right at the top who you plug in immediately. There are so many ways to get somebody who can play better than Jermaine Fetty and Jedrick Wills played this year and last year.
A couple other things. Batonio said that this is more upsetting than 0-16, which we talked about, and he wants to.
Thought too.
Yeah, the line. He wants the line to go. Obviously, what we've been talking about, wide zone scheme back, and it shows that if they're saying it, it shows how great that scheme was. Because what did he say? He's like, I pulled maybe 10 times
yeah.
this year when I used to pull 10 to 12 times a game. So he say obviously they weren't happy with what was going on, starting at the Greenbrier and then what ended up in Berea and then the crap show in the field. Let's move on to Miles. Miles saying next year with comments that involve the Browns. Mike put in, watch until the end.
Yeah, so in the beginning,
Anticipation.
his presser was all about the Browns, it seemed. He was like impressed and talking about, next year, the Cleveland Browns, my team. You know, he was very, very into the Browns. And then at the very end, somebody asked him a question, and I think it was MKC, asked him a question that kind of like unhinged the whole. You'll hear here. Here we go. Play it.
Process everything that you talk to those guys about before you make any decisions about anything?
I think that's the best way to decide with anything, and make sure you remove yourself from the situation and try to look at it objectively, not just look at it emotionally. Obviously, emotions are high with how the season has went, and guys don't feel very good about whether it's individual performances or the record, and you have to take a step back and allow yourself to decompress, and then make the best decision for yourself.
Is it safe to say that an potential extension this offseason with him, John, those conversations that you have with the higher ups?
There'll be something coming.
There'll be something coming, and then you good, and then he walks away, and I'm like, dude, no, I got so many questions. Let me ask a question, please.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, it like in the beginning, like I said, he was all for Cleveland. It seemed this team's got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. You got to have a sit down with this guy. I'm not gonna say grovel at his feet and give him everything he wants.
No, I'm saying that.
But make him. Oh.
No, I'm just
That was mentioned. It was mentioned though in the other press conference with the other guys that they are going to set up a sit down with him and talk to either. Said he wanted to know the direction of the organization and how they're planning on moving forward, and they're going to do it. They're going to sit down with him and they're going to tell him, here's our plans and here's our ideas for how we move forward. It seemed just like with the guys that we talked about in the interviews just previous to him, Myles Garrett didn't call anybody else out, but in his initial rant where he was having like a mic level emotional, like, he just, I'm frustrated and I'm just going to vent. Like that's a thing that Mike
does. Gets emotional on the show.
You're the one that gets emotional and is like, I just got to get this off my chest. He has this like Rizzo, anybody that's listened to ESPN Cleveland, like, Rizzo sometimes just like, sorry, yeah, 850. Rizzo just every once in a while hits this spot where he starts getting himself talking about something he's frustrated about, and at some point he's like, you know what? And he'll just rant, and like it's like such it's such a fan thing where it's like you can be frustrated about something and the topic hits. Well, when Myles had that whole thing where he was like, I'm frustrated and I think we need to do this and this and this. The biggest thing that we talked about on the show that came out of that is he said, we have to go next year and we have to find a way to have a quarterback, and we have to have an offense that can stay on the field, and we have to have an offense that can balance and run the ball. And like
execute.
All of that goes back to what the linemen were saying. Like, we need to go back to the old, he's a defensive player saying basically we need to go back to the old offense. And also we need to have a quarterback who can function here. And it just feels like all these players who have the veteran level to gripe or to actually speak out, like Myles, Joel, Conklin, like these guys who are that at that point, are all saying the same thing. Like, the old way we ran offense was better, and when we had a quarterback who can function and be consistent, that's what we needed. And we did all this circling around Deshaun basically, and it didn't work. And
think about it.
I just think they all are feeling the same way. Like, we need a quarterback who can actually play.
You got a defense that is wore the hell out because they're always on the field. You're 3 in and 3 out every other set of downs. It's ridiculous. And your defense is right back out there. Offense, we talked about it before. You got to get out there, waste clock, run the clock, get the ball down the field, score. Let the defense rest, because those are the guys that are going to save your ass at the end of every single game. We watched it with the Lions. Did you guys watch that Lions game the other day?
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, you throw 2 picks, and it's like nothing to the Lions, dude. We throw 2 picks, dude. It's a tragedy.
It's 27-0 after you
Yeah,
throw 2 picks.
the difference is between their running game and between the touchdowns that Goff can also throw.
Yeah,
they can actually make up for it, which is like was the Jameis experience. When he could throw a couple touchdowns to make up for it, we still had a great time and we won a little bit. But when you can't, like, that's the problem. And I think realistically, like, there's so many ways to get a quarterback. And I know that we're going to talk about mock drafts, and a lot of them for months will have us picking one. And maybe I would agree with it. I haven't even delved in the quarterbacks yet, but the idea is Jared Goff is a retread quarterback. So is Geno
Darnold.
Smith. Geno Smith is a retread quarterback that's like 36 years old and also has 10 wins under his belt and a playoff berth for the Seahawks. Sam Darnold was an absolute failure, who's a retread. Baker Mayfield has revitalized his
And you
career. So
said it.
now you're
You
looking
said it.
around the NFL.
You said it.
And
Here
you're
comes
seeing
all the
all
Baker
these
bros out of the
guys.
woodwork, bro. Here it comes.
The reason I bring it up is because no one wanted Baker Mayfield. No one wanted Sam Darnold. He was on like 5 teams in 4 years. Geno
Yeah.
Smith was basically not a starter for a decade. So when you start hearing in this offseason, do not panic when names like Zach Wilson come up, Daniel Jones come up, because all of us want to grunt at that now. Those people were Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. Jared Goff got traded along with like 3 first-round draft picks or something in order to get Matt Stafford. They gave away a guy that has 15 wins this season. 15 wins this season. They gave away to get Matt Stafford, and they gave a shitload more because that's how much they were like, Jared Goff is nobody, Matt Stafford is the guy. And 2 years later, you watch Goff really start to come around. And now 4 years later, you're like, oh my God, Jared Goff is probably better than Matt Stafford right now. You're just like, and Matt Stafford's still great, but you're like, oh, they sure got the end of that deal. So I'm just going to tell Browns fans, keep an open mind because the NFL has now decided you can get a 6th rounder or 7th rounder in Brock Purdy. You can get a guy who's been basically out of the league for a couple years in all those guys we just named. You can, I don't want to plug in some mid guy, but I, at this point, will be open to basically all options. Some will excite me more than others, but like the players have spoken. They need a quarterback, and Andrew Berry's number 1 job this offseason probably is to figure that out.
Give me 2. Give me maybe someone in the draft and a vet, somebody that you can groom up, and then give me someone that was willing to teach them, not someone who was selfishly come in thinking, hey, this is my team, and I'm going to be here for 10 years. No.
Speaking of grooming.
Oh, the next segment is brought to you by Beard Gains. That's right, Beard Gains. Go to www.beardgains.com. Check out the inventory of beard oils, shampoo, conditioners, beard balms. They got hats. By the way, my hat will be here tomorrow. They got shirts. They got a lot of cool stuff there at www.beardgains.com. And when you add that stuff to your cart, use the Bearded Browns as your promo code. You'll save 10%. And also, too, here's a plus. Anything over $35, free shipping. Free shipping. Your stuff gets here within 3 to 4 days. Our boy James Frank just ordered some today. He ordered what I have.
Oh, he got this. I got a story for James, actually, and you guys.
He got this stuff, the Valhalla, right? Yep, that's how you say it. And actually, it smells good. My beard is like a pillow right now. It's an amazing product. And I'm just saying that because we're affiliated with them, but I use it. Oil in the morning, balm at night, and then I smell good, feel good. So get there, Bearded Browns as your promo code, save 10% and free shipping over $35.
So I got a story for James. I told him I was going to tell him on the show. It's just kind of funny. So my wife has had COVID, and apparently me as well. But she lost her smell and taste and all that, right? So this morning I wake up, I take a shower, and I have the pristine one. Put in my beard oil. I walk back in the bedroom. She's making the bed, and she's like, "Man, you smell really good." I'm like, "Thanks." And she's like, "You want to be late to work?" And I'm like, "No, no."
Yeah, no.
Well, yes, but
So when
I
they
can't.
say, yes, exactly what I said. So when they say "made for men but loved by women" as their motto, it's fitting. That's
My
what
wife-
happened this morning, James.
Yes, and my wife loves it as much. Yeah, it's a good product, man. I'm not bull crapping yet. It's affordable too. I think it's like $12 for oil and like another
Right.
$14 for the balm or $12 for the balm. I'm looking to get the beard tamer because sometimes during work my beard gets very wild, and
This is right after work.
yeah.
I came right
So-
home and jumped right on.
So that's what I'm thinking about doing. So let's get into the next segment, which is basically we're going to talk about drafts. We got a couple things going now. We're going to give a mock draft mock draft and find out. We're going to give you
baby draft talk.
our baby draft talk.
Well,
Yes, I'm sorry, baby.
We're gonna
We're
run
gonna-
through this.
We're going to give you our top two big board and our top two big board. Each of us have hopefully two different. We really don't know. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if you guys put it in the file cabinet.
I
I
did,
didn't
but
look.
mine are changed because we did something different.
And then we're going to get into roster realities, basically breaking down a quick breakdown of the positions we currently have, and let's see what players that we can possibly maybe get. You know what, Chad? This is your baby. Speaking of babies, you can run with this right now.
Okay. So I love the draft. I used to love the draft so much. The Browns got me into the draft more than any other team could get anyone in the draft because we were picking like the top 10 every single season. And then the whole time I kept thinking, I kind of would like the draft too if we picked like 25th or 30th. But what happened instead is basically we just lost the draft because the part of the draft that's awesome is the first 2 rounds. And we just haven't had many of those picks lately. So because it's back, I'm so excited to dive back into the draft. For anybody out there, full disclosure, we watch some of these players' highlights. We look at some of these players' film, but I'm not a draft scout, and I'm never going to be because I think you have to know everything that's happening in college football to understand that. And you're much better off looking at somebody who does that for a living. So I look at Our Lads, which is kind of a legendary scouting site, PFF. Walter Football is another one. I listen to Dane Brugler's podcast, check out his big board stuff and his scouting reports. I look at the grades on Scouts Inc., all that stuff. And that's kind of where I give my information. And then I compile and come up with my own opinion of where I think the Browns should go. So for this first 2 segments, basically mock around and find out, we each just basically picked a mock draft that we're going to go through the top 10 just to start getting everybody used to the names on a lot of the mock drafts and who's going in the first 10 picks, because we're set to pick second, but about everybody in Brownstown knows Andrew Berry is a mobile drafter, and we could be drafting anywhere in that top 10 when he trades around. And the segment before that is the Bearded Big Board, and we're basically just going to start by giving you 2 players that are right now, from what we've looked at just in the last couple weeks, our top 2 players that we think are the best 2 players on the board to draft. And as the weeks go on, we'll start adding to these guys and getting more names under your belt, because there's kind of nothing worse than like not knowing the draft when it happens and like who guys are if you end up trading around or knowing who got a steal and who got rougher guys. So
I agree.
Without delay, let's start with the Bearded Big Board. And we're going to get each of your guys 2 names that you think right now sit as the 2 best players in the draft for a team to take. Doesn't necessarily mean the absolute best player. It means the top player to take with picks essentially 1 or 2 by anyone.
I guarantee you that you guys probably have the same, if not pretty damn close. No? The top 2 people in the draft right now, as of right now.
Are we talking about?
We're
talking about opinion.
1.
Okay.
Yeah, and these will probably change. I'll just
Yeah.
tell you this. I'll open by saying neither of mine are a quarterback, and the reason is I
Same.
haven't really studied the quarterbacks, and I think they're the most complicated. And I could see looking at the quarterbacks, eventually seeing one and being like, I think this guy's the starting quarterback in the NFL. That would automatically push him up my board, because I think getting a starting quarterback is the most important thing. Today, I don't
agree.
have one because I didn't see one of the quarterbacks that I liked enough to put there. I wouldn't be shocked if most people do have one of these quarterbacks in their top 2.
And while I agree, I guess I'll go first because I don't think any of the quarterbacks are really worth that much in this draft as well. But I'm going to go with the dynamic duo as of right now because it's the biggest trend of all: Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. That's it.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, they're the biggest talk right now. It's a group. It's Deion Sanders. It's got to be this international blown up thing because it's Deion Sanders involved. I'm not going to let my boys just go anywhere. Yeah, you are, buddy. You don't have a choice at the end of the day. They're going wherever they get selected by. So I think that's my top 2 right now.
The two Colorado boys.
Dynamic duos.
Colorado boys.
Okay.
I'll start off by saying, do you guys remember who was in the Super Bowl last year?
Not the Browns?
No, okay, no, Chiefs, in case you forgot, Chiefs and 49ers.
Yeah.
And did you know those two teams had top 10 defenses? Did you know that? This segues into my top 2 picks. And it's easy. It's easy. If you want to please Miles, give him a quarterback, sure. But give him somebody that he can play with in the field. Somebody that would take that triple team away from him. Somebody that he knows he won't get his eye poked every play. Give him Abdul Carter. You know that, right? Yeah, I like Abdul Carter. Why? Because Abdul Carter not only can play outside edge, but did you know his first year in college he played linebacker? Did you know that?
I didn't
So
know.
do you know what value that brings? Because JOK's uncertainty, maybe, just maybe, until they find somebody who can do linebacker, you can play Abdul Carter in the linebacker and let him run your defense.
Jesus.
While you
If anybody has seen Penn State, can you imagine that guy floating around off the line?
insane. And so
God, what a nightmare.
I came prepared. 220 this year. Pass rushing snaps 322. Last year 112 because again he was playing linebacker. Run defensive snaps 292. So he plays on the run defense too this year.
Is he number
Last year was
4?
268. His PFF score is a 90. Okay. By the way, did you know how many sacks that he got last year? 12. Can you imagine that next to 14, Myles Garrett doing 14, 15? That would be insane. This is what I'm saying. This is the best guy on the board. He can play 2 positions. No one's actually talking about that, by the way. No one's bringing that point up because I did. You want to know why? Because I did my homework. My next pick here is easy. Again, I'm going defense. I think defense wins championships. Sure, offenses are beautiful. It's great. The offenses are also switching to run first eventually in the next 2 to 3 years. So why not pick up a guy in the middle here, a defensive tackle? His name is Mason Graham. He's from Michigan. That's right. Overall grade is his overall grade is 90. Okay, and guess what? He plays defense. He doesn't matter. His snaps on pass rush 338. Run defense 210 snaps. You know how many sacks he got last year? 5. You know what's important in football on defense? Sacks. You know who else gets sacks? Myles Garrett. So you team him up with Myles Garrett. If he gives you 3 to 4, that's great a year. Also last year, 2020, he had 4. So this is a trend for him. He had 3 his first year, 4 his second year, and 5. What is that? We know what we call that on this podcast. He's trending up, meaning he's improved every year in this position. PFF also has him as a 90. So those are my top 2. By the way, did you know who they're comparing Duke Carter to? My guy Will Anderson in Houston, who had 11 sacks this year. Okay, you know who they're comparing Mason Graham to? Pretty good player in Miami. Do you know Christian Wilkins? Pretty good player. So if you can get one of those 2 players on your defensive line, Myles will get 20 sacks a year, and he's going to be the happiest guy in the world because he'll have actually first time ever get a sack title.
Okay. Wow. All right.
I went
wasn't
deep.
expecting
Sorry.
that.
Well, actually, you made it pretty easy for me because I actually have one player that each of you picked. Which
Okay.
surprised me. I actually thought there could be an overlap, but I did not expect that. So the one I overlapped with Angel is Mason Graham, and ironically, Abdul Carter is there too. He's somebody I looked at, I read a lot about recently. I've listened to some podcasts on some of the scouting reports. I've read just some of their strengths, weaknesses, looked at some of the upside and comparisons, same kind of stuff. The reason I went with Mason Graham is because I just think when you have a player that dominant and consistent, it's hard to pass. And since you were going over the PFF scores, you had mentioned he was a 91 basically on PFF. The last 3 years, he's been an 80, a 90, and a 91, placing him 5th and 2nd over all linemen last year. For me, having somebody that feels like that much of a lock, where 2 years in a row, where all 3 years that you have elite play, but 2 years in a row, you're 5th and 2nd in all of college, and you play a Big Ten schedule. To me, that and on both years, Michigan just has a great defense. So it's just like when you are just, one of those guys who's one of the best players on one of the best defenses, I just love that. So I also had Mason Graham. I think you plug in a defensive lineman that good on your team, and you completely change the way an offense has to play you. And then the other one, the same one I chose from as Mike was Travis Hunter. And again, I said no quarterbacks, so that was pretty obvious now. But Travis Hunter essentially is number one on like 19 out of 20 big boards right now. And the reason he's so incredible is he had a PFF score this year of 90. He was rated as the number one or number two receiver on almost every evaluation I saw. And he was rated as either the number one or number two cornerback at every position I saw, which means at worst, you're getting potentially the best cornerback and receiver in this entire draft at worst. And at best, you're getting the top both cornerback and receiver in this draft. And realistically, for me, looking at a team like the Browns is one thing, but there's not a team in the NFL picking towards the top that couldn't plug him in at either of those positions with the versatility of, we're going to play you at cornerback. That's where we think we want you going forward. But you're also going to play slot every so often because he's good enough to make a big play for you without having to dedicate himself to that position. And if he's number two at worst at both those positions and he decides to just dedicate himself to one of them, I can't imagine he doesn't become number one.
So what position do you think he's going to predominantly play in the NFL? Because it's not going to be two.
No idea.
He's not going to play
I have
two.
no idea. But I do believe it can be two if he plays corner. I do believe he could play corner and occasionally go in for trick plays or occasional passing plays. What I don't believe is he'll play full-time wide receiver, and then they're going to try to throw him out there as a basically full, even the nickelback plays 70% of the snaps. I just don't believe he could play full-time receiver and play corner, but I do think he could play full-time corner and play, 10 passing snaps a game and be dangerous. So
those are some good choices, guys, and those are going to change every week.
You can also add
what
a need for the Browns is punt returner, kick returner. I think you can plug him in there if he plays one position. And he will be dynamic there.
And one thing I like about him too is he could have just played wide receiver and he was going to get drafted in the top. The dude wants to be out there, and I don't believe he can play both ways, like Mike said, full time in the NFL. But you think if you offer punt returning, he's going to be like, nah, I don't want to be hurt. I got to look out for myself. He's going to be like, yeah, put me out there literally for every play, and I'll play. That's the mentality he seems to have, and I love that.
Well, that's like Greg said. He said this kid will end up hurt if he's doing both constantly. And again,
yeah, probably
with age, that's going to get worse and worse, or he'll be injured.
Yep.
I mean, you take it.
I see him listed as cornerback more. He has given no indication, and from all I can hear, he's basically saying, "Hey, I'm playing football. Get me on your team and put me out there, and I'll play what you need me to play." So, love that.
Yep. I like that. I do like Hunter. He's intriguing to me. I would definitely.
So
yeah. I mean, if they get him at 2, I wouldn't be mad. Next up is what mocks around and find out. We're going to go over what we pick. We picked one each random mock on the intranet. The websites. All right, let's go first. I picked the New York Times. Nick Baumgardner. How about just name the site and the who. I don't know if you guys wrote down the name of who wrote the draft.
Yeah, mine is Walter Football mock draft, and I believe this one is a staff draft, but the lead guy there is Charlie Campbell.
Mine is Tankathon, and I think it's a group of guys. Tankathon.com.
All right, I'll go first. Like New York Times one. First, he had Cam Ward, number 1. Will Campbell, number 2. Which, by the way, I think it's very intriguing. We all agree that the Browns need offensive tackle help, and we did not draft one with our top two. It kind of shows you what we really need. He has number 3, Sanders, Hunter number 4 to the Pats, Mason Graham to the Jags. Now he threw in here because of the news that dropped today that Drew Aller is thinking of actually going into the NFL. So he has Vegas drafting Drew. And then
That's cheating.
Wow.
Mike,
mean, just a quick pause. Do you think if Drew Aller finds out that teams would be interested in picking him
Yes,
6th
he's
in the
gone.
draft, he's not going to
gone.
be like, yeah,
He's
I'm
gone.
out. I'm
Yeah.
out.
He's like, I know what I said, but what I meant was I didn't think I was going to play this good in the playoffs, and my value was high, so I'm bouncing.
I think he'd be the best
Right.
choice in this whole ordeal
I
right
do.
now.
I think when we watched Ohio State, I think me and Mike were like, I would like to see him in the Browns uniform. I do like him. I don't know if I would like him at 6, though. That's kind of scary. Number 7, Michael Williams, edge, Jets. Number 8 to Arizona, which is interesting. McMillan. Can you imagine McMillan, receiver, and Harrison
say his
Jr.
first
there?
name. Come on, say his first name.
I was going to say I have a problem with ours. So it's Territora.
People just say Tet. Just so
Tet.
you know, to save
Tet.
yourself
We're
trouble.
just going to
it's
start
Tet
calling him Tit.
McMillan.
We're going to just go with Tit.
Tet McMillan. I think that would be intriguing there because they would have 2 tough receivers down there for him to throw to. Micaiah Starks is going to the Saints, safety Georgia. And then a dual Carter dropping to 10, Penn State to the Bears.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't look at yours.
Man,
I mean, I was going to upload
So,
these to the show, but I
This is why I love these mock drafts. Mine's in a totally different order, and I look at these. I hear something like Abdul Carter to the going 10th, and I'm like,
Insane.
that's why. That's why you actually don't need to pick first sometimes.
Exactly.
Because sometimes talent like that can't fall to you.
Ready for mine? I'll run through mine real quick.
Let's do it.
Tennessee Titans select Shador Sanders. Cameron Ward going to the Cleveland Browns in the 2nd round. 3rd pick is Travis Hunter to the New York Giants. 4th is Tit McMillan to the Patriots. 5th pick goes to the Jaguars from Mason Graham. Then we get the number 6 pick, Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan, going to the Raiders. 7th pick, Abdul Carter, Penn State edge rusher, going to the Jets. No. No. Nobody likes the damn Jets. I'm sorry. Abdul, don't go there. I know you don't have a choice. 8, the Panthers pick Malachi Starks. 9, Will Campbell, the offensive tackle out of LSU, goes to the Saints. And Calvin Banks, number 10, going to the Bears.
Yeah, they would need that. That makes more sense at 10 because they need an offensive tackle for their quarterback. That makes sense.
Yeah, and let's face it. By the way, mock drafts are basically a bunch of writers who know these big boards and where these players are kind of like hovering around, and they're just matching them to position. It's why the real draft gets so messy because one guy trades up for something or takes something that's a surprise, and then everything is a chain reaction of a mess. So for mine, again, I'm Walter Football. A lesser known site, but always ranks really high, and it's just a great actual scouting site, which is why I look at their mock drafts. So number 1, the Tennessee Titans take Shador Sanders, pretty popular top mock. Number 2, the Cleveland Browns select Cam Ward. Okay. Number 3, the New York Giants land with Travis Hunter. Number 4, the New England Patriots, offensive tackle Will Campbell. Number 5, see, that's the crazy thing with offensive tackles. I've seen 3 different offensive tackles ranked first. And it's a reason I can't pick one yet because I just don't even know who's that guy yet. Number 5, Jacksonville Jaguars select cornerback Will Johnson, incredible player. Number 6, the Las Vegas Raiders select Tet McMillan.
That's a good fit.
Man, could they use that guy? Number 7, the New York Jets select Mikael Williams, defensive end, Georgia. And then Carolina Panthers at 8 select Abdul Carter, edge rusher and linebacker. 9, the New Orleans Saints select Benjamin Morrison, cornerback, Notre Dame. That surprised me a little bit. and
Yeah,
10,
wow.
the Chicago Bears select Mason Graham, defensive tackle, Michigan.
Interesting.
So again,
You really
it's a
think
little bit
Mason
of
Graham's going to
variation.
go that high? I mean,
Dude, that guy is, like I said, like he's been an elite player like 3 years in a row, which in college, it's
Mason
so
Graham
hard
is
to
good,
do.
man. He's
He's great.
good. And I read
And
an
the way
article.
the way running is coming back, and it's
Yeah.
like disrupting
You
the
need it.
passer from the middle because like these guys like Lamar and these jittery guys like see the edge coming in and they just cut out underneath them and break the pocket to just disrupt the pocket.
And you can imagine him, Miles, McGuire, and Hall. I mean, Hall was getting in there in the middle. I think he had a couple sacks this year with 3.
I got to find out what that injury was first.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to find out what that injury was to end the season.
But yeah, that would be a good front.
Good.
That would
not
be a
only
good
that,
front.
But again,
those are all three different. All three of them were completely different, and they're gonna get, as it gets closer and closer to the draft,
they'll get closer and closer.
right.
yeah.
You're gonna see them start.
Well,
Yeah.
because the mockers, these guys like they get more evaluation as time comes in. The people that do this for a living have been looking at these guys for 3 years. This isn't new like it is to us, which is why I defer to them, because like these guys at Walter Football, these guys, they already have prospects for 2026 and 2027 ranked. Like they're looking at these guys that aren't coming out for a year or two. But as time gets by, not only do they start seeing like how these prospects line up, they start hearing from actual team scouts who likes them, who doesn't, and then free agency happens and the team needs become more apparent. Where the Browns pull this free agency wonder and get Sam Darnold, nobody's going to be mocking Cam Ward to them anymore. Like that will change. Nobody's going to be mocking Shedeur Sanders to them. Like so there's so many reasons this will change, but I do find it cool to go over the process because sometimes like these guys change and sometimes for the wrong reason. A guy runs this incredible 40, balls up these draft boards, and the real scouts are like, no, I've been watching this guy for 3 years. I'm not raising him 25 spots because he's faster than I thought in underwear. So I think that's where it becomes pretty interesting.
So my question is to you guys: if, say, for example, Ohio State goes out and wins a natty, will Will Howard's draft go up?
Probably. The quarterbacks, I think, are all in a position to do that because with this going on, like especially at quarterback, that's where owners and executives like start seeing guys and are like, we want this guy, and I'm going to make the decision to bring him in. But also, we've never had a chance. Like bowl games always happen, but like we've never had a chance to see this many quarterback prospects play through this long of a playoff and against like top level competition.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of things change with the drafts as well because there's so many people now. You got the NIL. I heard that it'd be better to stay in college, better than your shut up, Adam. Better than your rookie contract could be. It'd be better to stay in college as long as you possibly could and play out your college career, then go to the NFL because you could more than likely make
Johnny
more money in the
Manziel would
NIL.
have ever come out. He would have played like 7 years of college football.
Yeah.
He still would have been playing. He's like, I'm gonna go in for my 9th year.
Hey, Adam, that was me making just a quick observation and point. I wasn't.
Adam said no because quarterbacks not named Stroud suck.
He's a Michigan fan.
He's a Michigan fan. Because that's the only quarterback, running quarterback. No, he didn't even beat you guys. I don't know why you think he's good. I mean, he is good, but
he's good.
He's good. Yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah, that's wide variety of and this is it's going to be a weird draft. And I was thinking about this today. A lot of Browns fans are going to be upset regardless of what the Browns do because there's such a wide opinion. People want quarterback. People like Joseph just said it's quarterback or bust. It's like, really?
Me,
I mean,
I agree in the prospect of like, yeah, that's what this team needs to get good. They need a quarterback. But like I said, free agency might give us an answer. All these teams have found ways to turn retreads into successful quarterbacks, especially in particular systems like the one we run. But the third thing is we've also watched teams grab Mitch Trubisky with the second pick and 3 years later wish they had not done that and have been better off
We've done a lot of that.
elite level player not at quarterback. And so, like, you can see both ways. I'm very quarterback or bust, but I didn't put the quarterbacks up top because I have to get convinced that one of these quarterbacks can be an NFL legit starter. I don't need him to be Patrick Mahomes. I just need him to be a legit NFL starter who can have a team built around him. But I did notice our guys that we picked in our big board went anywhere from 1 to 10. So that should tell you, like, we picked these 2 guys that we thought were the best 2 guys in the draft to pick. And in these 3 mocks, they went anywhere between 1 and 10, all in different positions. So the opinion is all over the place.
You know what's going to be funny is to see people like Shedeur Sanders, excuse me, and Travis Hunter on different teams
Play each other.
Yeah,
playing each other.
Yeah.
Yes,
Those two
I wanna see
especially.
that happen.
Yeah, because they play with each other. a
especially
long
if
time.
Travis plays cornerback. That would be
That's what I'm
Interesting.
talking
That'd be
about.
pretty sweet.
Like,
Yeah,
It's like I-
interception on your dude.
He's like, I know I'm a receiver, but this game, can I play cornerback?
Yeah, exactly, dude. So that's what that
All
was
right.
why I kind of essentially picked that one. But that is it for today, ladies and gentlemen. It is late. I'm
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah. We do have one more. We'll roll that over to next week.
Oh, what is it? We do?
The rosters, realities, and intro to breakdown, position breakdowns.
roll it over. We got a long
yeah.
off season.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can save that. But yeah, stay tuned to find out what roster reality is next week on the Bearded Browns podcast. Don't forget to like all our socials, hit X on that, hit our X, hit follow, hit notifications. Do what you normally should do to know
subscribe
that.
and like.
Yeah, subscribe and like. Joseph, do you want to make a run at Darnold? I think Minnesota's going to do the smart thing here. I think Minnesota's going to sign Darnold and keep McCarthy, because if Darnold doesn't work out, they have their receiver, they have their young guy, and if he gets hurt, they have a good backup. I think that's a smart thing to do.
That is a
But
smart thing to do. I'm just hoping they don't.
yeah, but I'll leave you guys at that. Thanks for following. Don't forget to hit up our sponsors, Doug White from Allstate Insurance, also Bearded Browns, beardgains.com. Get all your beard stuff to make your beard look all nice and fluffy and smell good, and use the promo code Bearded Browns at checkout to get your 10%. Until next week, fellas and ladies, go Browns.